Hi, Setremont again of Twice Baked with the second part of how to use UV and ambient occlusion maps in virtual worlds. Alright, so I showed this movie to a couple of people and I had a remark of one of them. Rightfully, it's a simple question, but it's still rightfully, yes. How can I make or how do I get those UV maps and those ambient occlusion maps? Now, it's a rather simple answer, but actually there are two of them. It depends on how the mesh items are made. This one, for example, let me rescale it a little bit, is made in world. You still can recognize the prims in it actually. It's a nice one, but UV maps don't exist for that. You can't make them in world. So the content creator of items made in this way has to see that the textures, so has to prepare the ways that you can put the textures on top of this. So if it's correctly done, you can put any texture you like on it, and you can align them in as well planar as default. How to do that is not really the topic of this course, but if there are requests for it, I can do that afterwards if you like. Now, a much more advanced way of making mesh is using 3D programs. The meshes are a lot nicer like that. The geometry is better divided, and the whole construction is simply much more clean. In this case, the content creator gonna make the UV and ambient occlusion maps for you, often also indicated as AOs, not to be confused with scripts or the animations that you use to move your avatar. Mostly, if you don't use them, you get that typical noob cartoon walk like that. Nobody likes it. In this case, the ambient occlusion and the UV maps are supplied with the object you buy. Sorry. You can try to throw any texture you have on it, but it won't work always. So very often you do have to use the UV maps as indicated in lesson 1. What are those ambient occlusion maps actually? So let me show you two. This and this. So actually what does it represent? Now, a bit difficult since it's ambient occlusion maps, or ambient occlusion attempts to approximate the way light radiates in real life. It's a global method of calculating the illumination, which we see as shadows, for each point of an object. It's an estimation of shadows which you would have on an overcast day. So if we say that very short, they are simply shadow maps. Shadow maps are important because they give all our objects life. So what would I like to teach you today is I'm going to show you only the principle, just as in the first lesson. It's only the principles that I learn. I'm not intended to make a complete finished texture, but I would like to show you how to use those ambient occlusion maps and how to combine one or more AOs to get the best results. So here you see two different occlusions of one and the same object. You see the drawers here, which have detail, there are shadows in it, and here you see no drawers. Why? Because every time I make an occlusion and I change something in the position of the total mesh, so here for example I open the drawers, my occlusion gonna be different. So very often I do supply more than one occlusion map, and you can use them all and you can combine them as you like. Good. Now, how are we going to do all this? In tutorial 1 of this set of 2, I showed you how UV maps are used. Now, that's the base of everything. So we're gonna start where we stopped. I'm gonna close these two. I open Photoshop and I took already 2 UV maps. I'm gonna say, alright, this looks very similar. Yeah, they are similar for sure. But if you look in this area here, and if I click from one to another, you're gonna see there are small differences. Here it's not so much, but it can be pretty much actually. How does it come? Because I made the bed using a few positions. So I put the bedding on top of it, so close to that, so underneath it's going to be completely black. And I used one where I made it completely open. It's up to you, and I give you your choice, and please feel free to use your creativity to combine it and to make it in the best possible way as you like it. So I like to give people choice. Now, how I'm gonna do it? So this was the last one. Perhaps you tried already making some UV maps or some texture using UV maps. Let me drag this off here. And meanwhile, you have here, you made a texture, and most probably you're gonna have here a bunch of different layers. So you can do it with one, but it's always good and nice to have more than one layer, because you can influence everything and you have much more control of your texture and how you refine it and blend it and put shadows in it and God knows what. Now, first of all, we have to get the ambient occlusion map on top of this, always on the top layer. So select the top layer, select the first occlusion map, take the move tool, click and drag on the first ambient occlusion map, pull it over to there, let it become white again, go down again, and here is a difference. Here is the big difference. Instead of just releasing the left mouse button, first click on the shift key, then release. This way your texture is exactly centered on top of your UV map. It's very important, because otherwise you're gonna make a big mess and it ends up there, you have to center it again. No, just use the shift key and everything gonna be just fine. I do it with the second one. So click, drag, white, back down, shift key, release. Now you see here we have the layers of the texture, or here in my case the what should be the texture. One ambient occlusion map and the second ambient occlusion map. You can click on this eye here in front and you will not see it. It's still there, but you don't see it anymore. It's deactivated. And you have this one. Now imagine I just want to have of this one, I prefer these two items, and of this one I want to have all the rest. Now how can we do that? Very simple. We're gonna make a selection. First of all, we activate, so what did I say? This one of this and the rest of the others. So I could do a selection, I go roughly around it, I don't see that I go completely in it. Voila, almost finished. Double click, close your selection. See that that layer is active. And delete one of the two. Delete. So you can see here this is transparent. Those little squares means that you may have there a transparency, so it doesn't exist anymore. And this here is completely visible. This one is underneath. Oh no, we better take it away. So we're gonna activate this one. We go to select, inverse, you select the opposing side. See well that this one is selected, and delete. Now see the final result. Command or Ctrl D to deselect. You see you have one occlusion map made out of two. You have the choice in using which part of which occlusion map you want to use. As always, there is more than one solution, so you can work with masks also, but it's a bit more advanced and it works just fine like this. So for people who do that, who prefer that, and to work non-destructive, please feel free. For the sake of convenience, we're gonna merge these two layers. We're gonna activate them, shift select on both of them, so activate one, shift select, right click and merge layers. Now we have one. Now we can play with opacity and we're gonna get some effect at some stage, but you see, no, it doesn't work, it's not so nice. So instead of using that, we're gonna go in blending modes. Two ways to go in blending modes. We have here the blending modes in a shortcut or in a short way. We can choose, we have dissolve, we have darken, we have multiply, we have etc, 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 a whole list. Or we can use this function key, click on it, blending options, and we see for this case much better what we do. Pull it a bit aside. We see blend mode. You can use mostly for this too. Multiply gives a pretty nice effect. You see, totally different. Or you can use, where is it, overlay. In this case, not so good. So multiply, mostly I take multiply for such a case. Then watch out, very often those ambient occlusion maps are a bit exaggerated, so play with your opacity, play with it, see that you got it on a nice level, and you say, alright, yeah, this is a nice blend. So play with that opacity, don't just pull and drag it on top of it, do multiply. Try to keep control of any of your actions. Okay, and done. That's all you have to do. Texture is done. Imagine that this. All is done. Good. Save your texture. Two ways to save your texture. Save as. Give it a name, whatever name. XXXXXXX. Voila. And then save it as or a PNG. Gonna make it automatically, although I prefer to use normally a TGA file. If you do a TGA file, I can explain in another lesson also if you want why. Save it as a 24 bits per pixel. It's important. If you do it as a 32 bits, you're gonna make an alpha layer and you're gonna have alpha bleeding, and really it's gonna look very ugly. So 24 bits. Okay, it's done. That's all. Upload in world, which I presume is pretty well known, and just apply it to the mesh. It's gonna adjust itself exactly where it belongs, so no problem as it concerns there. Just pull and drag it and put it on top of the mesh. Finished. If you wouldn't have seen the first tutorial of this set, and if there is information missing regarding that, please feel free to do so and have a look at it. I do wish you a lot of fun with your building projects. If you like this tutorial, please be so kind to do me that favor, please, to do the like button, only if you really like it, of course. And if you would like to see following tutorials, you can always subscribe. So I send to those people who are too kind to do that an invitation for following tutorials the moment that they are there. Have a nice day and cheerio. See you next time.